Hey Maya, how are you?
Hi, Tura. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I was trying to get myself together in the background, so left you some little Kendrick going.
No worries.
Good. Well, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate having you and taking time out to meet with us and have just, a little laid back conversation around self awareness as we communicated or what have you. But first, we just want to take the time to introduce you. So, Maya is it Ali Cheo, or correct me, please?
Yeah, Ali.
Ali Cheo is the CEO and co founder of Quality Healthcare Services, which is a behavioral health agency based in Washington, D.C., that provides culturally responsive mental health services to children. Also, you have the background in psychology, committed to community care, all of the things. You oversee operations, working across departments to ensure families receive quality support. You also are pursuing your master's in clinical psychology. Congratulations on that. That's
Thank
huge.
you.
You're at Pepperdine, right?
Yes.
All right. So you stated that you're passionate about breaking generational cycles through accessible and compassionate mental health care. So accessible is what stands out to me because that's very important to make sure the resources and the care is there. So
Definitely.
we'll jump right in, Maya. So the first thing I want to know, like, who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself and just give us a quick overview of who you are.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Maya. I grew up in the DMV area, specifically in Silver Spring, Maryland. That's where I grew up for the most part. But I've also lived in Tallahassee, Florida for a good part of my childhood. And then when I was 16, I moved to Tanzania, which is where like my mom, my dad, and the rest of my family are from. Um,
Mhm.
so I lived there for, what was it, 2 years? I
Okay.
finished high school there. And then from there, I went to England, London specifically, where I did my undergrad. And when I finished that, then I came back to the States. So I've been back in the States since 2018. And my path to mental health hasn't really been straightforward. I did my undergrad in accounting and financial management.
Yeah, okay.
Even though mental health is what I always wanted to pursue, but just, circumstances made me pursue a different path at the time. But
Mhm.
passion has a funny way of finding its way back to you if it's really a passion. So I thought that I was going to pursue an MBA after my bachelor's, but I went a couple years with not really knowing what I wanted to do before I started working at behavioral health agencies in the district. And once I started working, I was like, whoa, this is where I'm meant to be. And that's where I've been since 2018. I went back to school and got my bachelor's in psychology. And then I started my master's in clinical psychology last year. And I will be graduating in spring of 2026.
Kudos. Love it. I love to hear it. And
Thank you.
passion of purpose does have a very non-linear way of finding you and you finding it. So we just do like a quick rapid fire when we start out, and we just
Sure.
kind of go through our girl talk here. So real rapid fire. Name three things that you love about yourself.
Oh, wow. Good question. I love that I'm not a pushover, um, which can come off as being mean, but I think I'm just assertive. So I'd say I love that I'm assertive. I love that I'm passionate, and I love how loving I am towards like my family members and people that are closest to me. I'm very protective over them.
I can feel you on that, Maya. Like, I feel like family can be the anchor or is the anchor in my life for a lot of the things that I bridge off and do, whether it be personal, professional, passion. extracurricular, so family does anchor you. So I'm with you on that. So we'll
I
just go in and, just see where the conversation leads us. You cool with that?
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. So, here at Tilt Soil, we, as you already probably know, we are a community that focuses on self awareness, financial literacy, and career development. Thank you for coming to focus in and hone in on our self awareness. I think career may be something that you could give us some tips on too, just based off of your journey that you shared
Sure.
today. But we'll see if the conversation takes us there. So, um,
Perfect.
so you would say that you're self-aware, right? Like as far as who you are and how you show up. So saying that you're self-aware, what's your journey been like being self-aware, and what was the one pivotal moment for you?
That's a really good question. Just like my path to mental health, I don't think my journey to self-awareness was linear. Um, I was a young bird once who was really lost and wasn't really sure what I was doing with myself and kind of just following the crowd like most young people do. I think it's really tricky being put out there into the world at such a young age. I graduated high school at 17, and you're kind of expected to just know what you want to do and have life figured out. But that definitely wasn't the case for me. And I was just kind of waving my way through life. And I definitely didn't have self awareness at that time. I was in a pretty toxic relationship, and I was just kind of following what that person was doing. And it took me a long time to realize that it wasn't serving me and I wasn't going to get far in that situation. And I needed to really sit down on myself and figure out what I wanted for myself, what I was going to do to get there. Because it's more than just figuring out what you want out of life, but also kind of laying down the steps on what you're going to do to get there. So that
Mhm.
was what was pivotal for me once I had that sit down with myself, figure out what I wanted to do, and then laying down those steps on how I was going to get there. That's when I kind of snapped out of that following mentality and
Mhm.
turned more into like a leadership mentality.
That you created a plan for yourself. Was it hard to implement at first when you first laid out your plan, made the decision, this is what I'm going to do? Was it hard for you to actually start doing it and implement the steps that you laid out?
Not at all. The hard part was just getting out of that, like, what am I doing? Just following the crowd. That was the hard part. But once I was honest with myself and knew what I needed to do to get to where I wanted to go, it was just action.
And how did things look for you after you took action? Like, did it immediately look different for you as far as your surroundings and your environment? Did your friend groups change? What did that look like?
Immediately, I'm not really in contact with anybody that I was back then. That was like what, 6 or so years ago.
Mhm.
No, more actually. I'm thinking 2018 was not 6 years ago. That was like 2020, but
Yeah.
2018 was a while ago. I'm not, in contact with those people anymore. My goals change, so naturally the people that I surrounded myself changed with too. And it was necessary. It was just a part of growth when you're going from one situation to the next. Not everybody is going to move with you, and that's something that I had to learn, because sometimes you think
Mhm.
people are going to be with you forever, and that's
Mhm.
not always the case. Sometimes people are with you for just a moment.
Mhm. That's true. And sometimes people are not with you. They're just there to monitor what you're doing. They're really not for you. They're just
Exactly.
around. So how did you implement your boundaries? What did that process look like? Was it successful at first, or share some of that?
So boundaries, that took a while. Even learning about boundaries, I don't think I really learned about what boundaries were until I got pregnant with my daughter. That's when I started to really learn about boundaries and implement them. And at that point, this is also where I found my love for generational trauma,
Mhm.
because I was bringing life into the world, and I didn't want the things that I witnessed during my childhood and youth to continue, and I didn't want that to pass on to my daughter. So I knew that I needed to be the person to stop that generational curse. So that's when I really learned about boundaries during my pregnancy. And it's call it hormones, but it wasn't hard to implement them. I was like, this is what I want, and this is what's going to happen. Either you get on with the ride, or you're not going to see my kid.
There you go. There you
It
go.
worked.
For sure. For sure. Well, speaking about like generational trauma and you kind of sounding like you're being the first to implement some things or to start new generational patterns and traditions or what have you that are more positive and that reflects more of what you desire for your daughter and so on and so forth. Like what major influences did you have like growing up as a, youth and young adult female? Was there any influential women that were in your life? What did that environment look like for you?
Oh yeah, I definitely had a lot of influential women in my life. I'm a firstborn daughter, born to a firstborn daughter, who was born to a firstborn daughter, and so on. Like it's like generations of firstborn daughters. And if anybody knows how firstborn daughter like dynamic goes, it's really heavy. And
Mm,
so, at least I'm an only child, but my mom isn't. She's one of five, and my grandmother is like one of 11, I believe.
mhm,
So their situations obviously are a lot different because they had younger siblings that they had to be responsible for, and kind of like that second mother figure. For me, it was just me. So I think I had the ability to break out and do something for myself. But with them, they were responsible for other people. Whether that's fortunate or unfortunate, don't really know. But, they just didn't have the same path that I did. So I think if I had younger siblings, it would have been harder for me to demand that independence and set those boundaries
mhm,
and things like that. But looking at them, what I did learn from my grandmother and my mom is independence, regardless of being in a relationship with someone or not. Um, you still have to do something for yourself, not being
mhm,
dependent on other people to provide for you. Um, and that doesn't mean not having a partnership,
mhm,
emotional support, even financial support. All that can still exist. But at the end of the day, having something to fall back on. And so education was really pushed on me, despite the fact that my grandmother never went to college. I'm not even sure that she finished high school, to be honest. And my mom, she just got a bachelor's in her 30s, early 40s, actually. Yeah,
mhm,
early 40s. So um, for me, they just really pushed
mhm.
education, being independent, making sure that I had my own and not relying on others to provide those things for me.
I mean, I think that's great because one of the things that the hard truth that I tell my daughter and any other female or young adult, young lady that I'm around, nobody's coming to save you. There are just people here to support you,
Exactly.
to rally you on, and it's very, it sounds harsh, but it's a truth. And, and it makes you want to go harder and rally on for yourself. And my dad used to say, God helps those who helps themselves. He loved that one, but it's true, even if you don't want to go to that level, it's like people love to help people who are doing something or pushing something, and it's inspirational, so to speak. So I think that is a great lesson learned. So talking about like you talked about your mom and how she got her bachelor's in her 40s. Kudos to her, for continuing to set the example by doing and not just saying. I think that's beautiful. How do you reset? Like, what do you do? Like when you have to start over, you talked about ending a relationship, starting a new narrative. Like, how do you hit reset? And what is that mentally and emotionally? What did that look like for you?
That's a really good question. So for me, if I say I'm going to do something, I just do it. And if I need to change my surroundings, get out of a situation, I really will just do it without a plan, which I'm not sure if that's the best method or not, but it's worked for me. And sometimes I have a lot of faith. And so I just let God and my confidence in myself as well guide me, and know that I won't put something in my head if it's not going to be beneficial for me. and
Right.
I won't put myself in like sticky situations either. So if it's having to start over, like going back to school, getting out of a relationship, whatever the case is, if I've gotten to the point where I'm thinking that that decision needs to be made, then I already know it's going to benefit me down the line. And so I just need to remain steadfast and have a positive mindset throughout that whole journey and get it done.
Look, I can name so many different things, people, and opportunities that were created off of winging it
Yeah.
and trusting in your decision making skills, or even if you're not there, like, well, what's the worst that could happen? You know what I mean? Like, kind of just going with it. So, trust me, you have, many people that are there with you, including myself in some situations. Like, I don't know how this is going to go, but we want to see what's going to happen. So, yeah.
Exactly.
So let's talk about like kind of the community of mental health and awareness and things of that nature. Being that depression, comparison, and all the things that works against our healthy state of mental health. What are some sustainable daily activities you would advise like young and young adult girls to implement that they can sustain, like daily habits? What would you advise them to do in that regard?
Yeah, to combat like depression.
Combat depression, believe in themselves, just good mental habits to reinforce who they are and what they want out of life, just some good habits. What are yours? We can start there. What are your daily habits?
I really love this question. For myself, one of the biggest things that I did, like I was in a really depressive state last year, and one of the things that really helped me is running. And I know running is not everybody's forte. I used to hate it because I'm asthmatic, or I was growing up, but I did not like running. But once I started, I really fell in love with it. There's this thing called a runner's high, and once you reach that runner's high, there's just something so euphoric about it. So I would say exercise is a really good one.
Mhm.
You release all those good endorphins, and not only are you treating your body physically, but your mental too. So exercising would be one. I'm not big on journaling, but I do have a lot of friends who journal who says it's really beneficial for them because it encourages self-expression, it encourages you to reflect and process your emotions as well. So writing down things like, let's say, what made me smile today, or one thing I'm proud of, those like scenarios really help you reflect on your day and focus more on the positives rather
Mhm.
than the negatives. But I also have a friend who does like a worry dump. So that's a good way to release any bad feelings or release stress. Just put it all out there rather than storing it in, which is, I think, something that a lot of us do, especially women. We just keep in all this bad energy, stress, negativity until one day we just blow up and we're like,
Mhm.
where did this come from? And you can't even
Right.
remember what is the first thing that really set you off, started this cycle, but it's just things that's been building up for weeks, months, maybe even years, that one day your body was like, enough is enough. I can't
Mhm.
hold on to the stress anymore and I'm just gonna combust. And that's usually what happens. So I think just doing whatever you can to release that
Mm.
energy is really good. So yeah, exercise, journaling. I have also a friend who has a gratitude journal. So just writing down all the things that she's constantly grateful for every night, no matter how small they are, helps her reflect as well.
Mhm.
The same friend, she's also really, really into art. So we call her a little artiste. She is really great at expressing herself creatively. So she loves to go to dances. Um, she loves to make art everywhere she travels. She'll usually go to an art class in that country or city and come back with a piece of art that reminds her of that place. That's
Mhm.
one way. Um, yeah, I think those are,
Those are great. Like the creativity piece of things, the physical release, and just the simplicity of you saying, just find a release, whatever that looks like.
yeah.
I learned when I was, you know, in corporate and doing things, they taught us when we go on interviews to make, to start a brag book. about yourself? Like, what are all the things that you do well, like from the smallest things to the thing that is applicable to your job functions? But, I carry that over. Like, I create a brag book about myself, and I found that some people find it very hard to do that. And honestly, I had to get used to it because it felt funny writing down all the things that I'm great at, but that's more of a thing that we kind of impose on ourselves, not
Yeah.
being able to express how great we are. But
Yeah.
once you get used to it, it flows really easy. Like, you should be able to stand in your own greatness, and you're like, this is who I am. I'm that girl, So I think once we get used to that, other things just come easier to us. So I
True.
love what you shared about, releasing. I think that brings us to, my next question about comparison. And
Mhm.
I know there are cliche answers, but I want to hear your thoughts. Like, why do you think comparison is such at an all-time high other than social media? You got to give me something different. I know that it
Oh,
plays
wow.
a part, but what else do you think, like from a psychology perspective, like what's the narrative running here?
Okay, well, obviously social media is the big one, but apart from social media, I
Yes.
think there's a big pressure to perform.
Mm,
There's so much pressure to be successful, to be attractive physically, be accomplished, happy, and then all at once. So whether that's young kids at school, adults that are at work, whether you're in relationships, the way you appear, there's this idea that you always need to be leveling up constantly.
mm,
There's no contentment anymore. And I feel like this creates a belief that your worth is tied to whatever you achieve. I also feel there's like a lack of identity work. Many
mm,
people haven't really been taught how to explore who they are outside of any external validation. And that kind of brings me back to social media.
mm,
I feel like a lot of us post on socials. Like, if you're really honest with yourself, why are you posting this picture? Are you posting it because you really like it and you just, wanting to share? Or are you posting it so other people can see it? So other people
mm,
can see, like, oh, tour is having so much fun. Tour travels so much. Da da da.
mm,
Like, we haven't been taught to explore who we are outside of people validating us. So we measure ourselves by what others are doing instead of our own values, our own pace, and what our purpose is. And I think those are, apart from social media, I think those are really two big ones.
Maya, like at our own pace, like that's real. Like I really, yeah, that resonated even personally. You have to question, like, well, why do I post? Like, that brings up a great point. So you mentioned identity work. Tell us what that is and what that looks like. Just give us like an overview of what that looks like.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say identity work is one, a really important concept. It's just exploring, understanding, and also defining who we are as people, what matters to us as individuals, and how we want to show up in the world.
Mm,
So basically, what our purpose is. I think a good way is asking, who am I outside of what I do or what
mm,
others expect of me? What do I believe in? What parts of me have been shaped by maybe the different things that I went through, like trauma, my own culture, the family that raised me, or even survival? Because, not all of us are raised or grow up on love. Many of us also grow up on survival. And so,
mhm,
what parts are the real me and not
mm,
tied into those things? So I think without identity work, it's easy to live based on other people's values. And, like, yes, we grow up and our parents teach us things, but their values don't necessarily align with our values once we grow up. We can
mhm,
take bits and parts from our childhood, things that resonate with us once we become adults, once we have that understanding of who we are, but we don't have to take everything. And I think it really helps us as individuals build some inner confidence. So rather than constantly comparing ourselves to others, um, I think it's also important for healing, especially for those that had traumatic experiences, traumatic childhoods, especially bringing it back to generational trauma or even identity based oppression like racism, Islamophobia, colorism, anything that minors, minorities experience. So I think those are a few
That's
things.
that's real good stuff. What would be like the top 3 steps or 3 of the most important things when we talk about from a contextual standpoint of, treating generational trauma triggers, identity, things like that? How would I'm a young adult female, at least I still believe I am. I'm a young adult female, right? And I'm like, Maya, like, I don't really know who I am. Like, I don't know
Mhm.
if it's where I was brought up, if it was my family, if I'm just out here surviving and just trying to see where I fit in. What's step 1, 2, and 3 on how I would begin a healing process or begin my journey?
I think the first step is questioning your beliefs. So, do I actually believe this, or was I just taught to believe this? So, whether that's beliefs about money, gender roles, I think is a really good one when I go
Mhm,
back to thinking about the whole firstborn daughters or just daughters and families. So, what our gender roles are, mental health, mental health is still something that's really taboo and usually shamed in different communities, not something that you talk about. So, just questioning what it is that you believe. And then once you do that, naming what your values are. So, what really matters to you? Is it peace? Is it honesty, family, faith? What matters to you? And then
mhm,
even exploring your roots. So, what parts of your culture, your upbringing, or your history shaped you? And did it shape you for better or did it shape you for worse? And then letting go of different roles. So, am I living as me, like who I want to be, or just the good daughter that are ways to be, or if you're the strong friend, or if you're the overachiever, or if you're the person that's constantly tying your worth to your accomplishments. And then
mhm,
once you do that, I feel like the final step is claiming new truths. So this is who I
mhm,
am now, and I get to redefine that at any time. We're ever evolving beings. We don't have to stick to one person. Like one thing I used to like joke about all the time, but I actually really feel is that I love to reinvent myself. Me from 5 years ago is not who I am right now. And 5 years from now, this is not who I'm going to be either. I could be a whole different person. Like you don't have to stick to being one person. Reinvent
mhm.
yourself constantly and claim new truths about yourself too.
That's good. I love that. So as far as like in a family dynamic, if I'm a mom and I have a daughter, like, you're a mom, you have a baby, what are some of the things that you're going to look for within your daughter? I feel I can personalize this question now. You're going to look for within your daughter that's going to say, hey, what I'm doing from a mental health and awareness standpoint, based off of her actions, habits, patterns, what have you, it's working, it's going to work for her good versus these are the signs or the red flags I need to look for. Like we need to kind of hone in on this and figure out what's going on. So what are some of the signs of that stuff?
That's a really deep question. I think it takes a lot of inner work. So I think signs that what you're doing is working is that your kid is expressive. Like mine is only 2, she'll be 3 soon, but she's really
Mhm,
good at naming her feelings. She tells us
mhm,
when she's frustrated, when she's angry, and like big emotions, not just, oh, I'm happy, I'm excited. No, she tells us the negative ones too. So when she's feeling frustrated, when she's anxious, when she's angry, nervous, all those things. And for me, that shows that she has emotional literacy at just the age of
mhm,
2. And she's not bottling up or acting it out without being able to identify the emotion that she's feeling. And as a kid who didn't really get the chance to express themselves growing up, was very quiet, that is a big sign that I'm doing something right.
mhm,
And her feeling safe coming to us, um, she's not really at this stage yet, but in the future, when she has more words, being able to come to us, like let's when she's a teenager or something, being able to come to us and share any struggles or hard stuff without feeling like she's going to get judged or punished as well, which as parents, I think for us will show that we've created a really safe space for her, an open environment where she can trust us emotionally and know that, she can come to us about anything. And then another big one, which I struggled with, is her knowing to be kind to herself. So not
Mm,
being hard on herself if she makes a mistake, which is up to us as parents. So like if she spills something, not getting so angry about it. She's a kid, spills happen, mistakes happen. And I think that will translate as she gets older because then she'll know not to be hard on herself either. So I think those are some signs that we know that we're doing well. And then
mhm,
the opposite side, if we think we need to do more, is literally just the opposite of what I just said. Instead of
mhm,
being emotionally literate, she would shut down emotionally. So if she stops sharing her feelings, maybe zones out or avoids us if she's upset, I think that that might show that emotionally she doesn't feel safe.
mhm,
She might be overwhelmed, or maybe something is going on outside of the home, like at school with friends, teachers that we don't know about and that we need to look into more. Another thing that I struggle with is perfectionism or
mm.
being harsh to myself. So
Yeah, yeah.
if she's talking to herself and saying things like, I'm stupid, I never do anything right, or is just overly hard on herself, then that's a sign that she's probably internalizing pressure or she has a big fear of failure. Um, and fear of failure is very crippling. I have
Mhm,
family members who struggle with making decisions because they fear failure. And as a result, they're not really able to progress because they
mm,
think any step that they take, they'll fail. And then the last one I'll say on that end is people pleasing. Um,
mm,
that's a big one. If she's always worried about making me and her dad proud or not upsetting us, then she might be tying her self worth to our validation. And that's
mm.
definitely not something that I want for her.
Mhm. Those are great, like and that I think all of those are applicable. It doesn't matter the age, like, it's beautiful that you're able to be cognizant to start with her so young, and she has the emotional literacy, I love that term, and to be able to implement those things and correct the course if necessary. But I do believe that those identifiers are applicable at any age,
Mhm.
any dynamic of a relationship too, to an extent. So I think those are great and can be applied in so many different dynamics. Definitely with your baby girl. I think that's amazing.
Thank you.
Um, well, what's do you feel like is a common misconception that you figured out? So basically, like when it comes to dealing with youth and young adult girls, what do you think one of the most, not most, but the biggest or one of the largest misconceptions when it comes to women of color being youth and young adult girls that we get a rap for?
Mhm. That's a really good one. There's so many stereotypes that women of color get. One of the
Yeah.
biggest ones that I think we all struggle with is being like the strong, the strong woman, the strong friend, the strong family member, um, and that you don't need emotional support because we're just supposed to like figure things out. And
Mhm,
this is tied down systemically. Like this is even in medical books about how women of color are able to tolerate pain more than other women. And so I feel like strength from the beginning for us has been misinterpreted, and people see us as being emotionally invincible. So
mhm,
a lot of young women of color are praised for being resilient. Even I don't take it as a compliment when people say that girls mature faster than boys. That's not a compliment for
mhm,
whatsoever. That we're just so mature for our age or we handle things well and things like that, even though deep down we're hurting deeply inside. But
mhm,
we don't have that same support to express ourselves. So you wouldn't know how we're navigating our emotions because you just assume we have it all figured
mhm,
out. And I feel like the truth is that many of us were forced to be strong, not born to be strong. And
mhm,
that is, at the end of the day, tied to survival rather than wellness.
mhm.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. What's one solid piece of advice that you would give our girls?
Hmm. A deep one. I feel like
Oh, we put on my
there's
vest. Let's go.
so many different things I could say. I have I have a friend, and something that we talk about a lot is how um we don't have to be everything for everyone, you know? Like we don't always have to show up for others, and sometimes we just need to show up for ourselves. So rather than being everything for everyone, just be everything for yourself first. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I know that the saying the saying is really common. You can't pour from an empty cup, and I think that's so real. Um, that whole that whole saying, it just reminds me that we're allowed to prioritize things at our own pace, whether that's our growth, our healing, the journey that we want to go on, and also gives us permission to let go of performing. I think so many of us are performative because we feel like, again, we need to be the strong friend. We need to be the person that's just there for everyone. Um, ties back to people pleasing and always trying to prove our worth. And I think the whole you don't have to be everything for everyone, just be everything for yourself. It teaches us that self-love isn't selfish.
Mm-hmm.
It it's keeping us alive, and it's allowing us to be sustainable because we keep pouring from our cup. At the end of the day, we're not going to have anything else to
Mm.
pour, especially if nobody is pouring into us, you know?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I would
That's
say
great advice.
the biggest advice.
That's great advice. It makes me think about, like even how I personally show up in friendships and things of that nature. I came to a point where I had to be, and I think I went through a grieving process, of my life looking and feeling a certain way and learning to take a step back for me and not to be identified as said friend, fill in the blank, the strong friend, the friend that always initiates, or the friend that does most, whatever, however I was showing up in whatever friendship dynamic that was.
Mhm.
Um, I really had to go through a grieving process to really take a step back to do some identity work. Like, how do I really want to show up and what's really sustainable for me? What really brings me joy? And
Yeah, of
sometimes it would really, excuse my expression, it would piss people off, and
course.
it was heavy on the, oh, well, you know what I mean? I got to figure this out for me. And it took a while. It took, some time for me stepping away from people that I truly loved. But there was a why behind that, like, why do I feel this way? So, I feel like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's absolutely normal to go through a process, what it was for me, to grieve who you used to be
Of
in
course.
certain situations. And there was crying, there was narratives that I would play back and forth in my head, like, now who am I again in this dynamic, and it was tough. It was absolutely tough. So I just really want to drive home the point, like, that you're saying, be all things to yourself, and that will begin to let you know mentally and emotionally how you want to show up for other people. If it's heavy on who's all over there, do I really want to come, so
Yeah, that's real.
yeah, so I think that's great advice, and it totally resonates with me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's definitely something I've been learning um, over the years. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to change yourself completely. You could still be that person for people, but be it for people that deserve it. Be it for people that pour back into you too. If you see that, like you said, you're the one always initiating, you're the one always reaching out, you're just always the one doing, it becomes draining at some point. And you start
Absolutely.
to feel that, like, every time I'm around this person, I just feel so drained. I never
Mhm.
feel fulfilled. And you
Right.
have to look into that why. And the why is usually tied into the fact that it's because it's always you.
Yeah, and I'm gonna tell you something else, that process helped me too. It helped me understand that I was also creating a narrative around my friendships, and what I mean by that is that It was a part of who I was, and it was basically, I'll try to articulate, just, my friendships became, if my homegirls weren't doing anything or going to brunch or whatever we were into, then I wouldn't go. I
Mm,
would just stay at home, or I wouldn't travel, or, whatever the case may be. And
mhm.
I had to reset and show up fully how I identified my new self to be, or how I realigned myself, I guess is the
Yeah.
better way to say it. And it was different. But it was good. It was real good.
That's good.
It
At the
was
end of
really,
the day, as long as you feel good, that's all that
yeah,
matters.
it
And you're
was
not
real.
hurting anybody either, that's all that matters.
Yeah, so I just think it's, like you said, like it's really great to make adjustments. You don't have to change the core of who you are, but you
Mhm.
can, readjust to be better aligned, to show up better, fuller, more engaged, or whatever that looks like. I think that's important.
I
Why
agree.
do you think, like organizations like Tilled Soil, since we do mentorship and resources and things like that, life coaches, yourself, being, down the path of a clinical psychologist, why do you think those things are important for our community, specifically of Black and women of color, women?
Um, I think one is representation, being in those communities of color, underserved communities in general. It's just great for them to see representation. It's great for them to see people like us in these fields because then at the end of the day, it's motivating for them and they see that they too can get out of whatever situation that they're in. Um, Access to culturally relevant care is important too. Not everyone feels safe or understood in a traditional mental health setting or space. And I think community-based organizations like Tilled Soil and Quality Healthcare Services can offer that culturally and linguistically appropriate services that speak to people's lived experiences, especially
Hmm.
when they see people that are
Yeah.
just like us. And it helps reduce stigma like I was mentioning earlier, mental health is still a really big taboo and it still has that stigma on it. So making mental health feel like something that belongs to us rather than something that's done to us is really
Mhm.
important.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a good catchphrase. I love it though. As far as like, getting a mentor, getting a therapist, and things like that, considering that these things are not quite accessible, what are some steps that you would tell anyone, but especially, our audience, here at Tilled Soil, to take when they're looking for a mentor, a therapist, a life coach, things that are going to help them progress their life? What are some of the things you would tell them to look for?
Yeah, finding a mentor or therapist, it can be something that's really life-changing, especially if you find the right person. So I think one, you have to be honest with yourself and clear on what it is that you need. So do you want support with healing? Do you want like Tilled Soil provides career guidance, financial literacy? Do you want to be able to identify explore your identity? Do you need to regulate your emotions? This will just help you know what you're looking for in a therapist or a mentor. And then from there, you could look for someone who aligns with what those things are that you want to work on, and also finding somebody that aligns with your values. So whether it's your religious values or your racial identity, your culture, whatever it is that you would like to have that similarity, and then doing your research. It's unfortunate that not every community has these organizations readily available, but I know there are some websites that offer a list of people who might be available and things like that. But I also think that as organizations, it's important for us to get out there, get out in the community that we want to serve, make
Mhm.
ourselves known and make ourselves available so people know that we exist. Um, and then from there, just reach out, be authentic, be real. So just say, like, you find Tura, for example, and say, I really admire your work that you do, and I'm looking for someone to help me guide me so I can grow. Would you be open to mentoring or offering advice? And 9 times out of 10, the person is going to say yes. They want to help.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that I say a lot. Like if you know, get in touch with anyone, however it aligns with you, right? Whatever you're looking for, 9 to 9.5 or 10 out of 10, somebody that you're going to lean into to ask for help, advice, guidance, they're going to tell you, because one of the things that are people that are authentically in their space that they've created out of purpose and passion, they want to help somebody else. And it's
Yeah,
just,
they're just waiting
you
for you to reach out.
absolutely, absolutely. So that's great advice. What, as a community, the community that we're in, what can we do to have a greater impact? We talked about making resources accessible, making the therapy accessible, just all those things. What else would you say that we could do to be more impactful?
That's a really good question. I think that, again, putting ourselves out there is really important. So not just joining a community, like, having a building a community and being like, oh, I'm here, but never going out into the community. I think that's a big missing piece. So find out what community events exist and put yourself out there,
Mhm.
volunteer, just make yourself known. I think that's really important. And once you're out there doing that, that's when you can start doing things like normalizing these mental health conversations and mentor conversations. Talk about therapy as if on a regular basis we talk about going to the gym or going to the dentist, going to your regular PCP. Maybe hosting open dialogues too in safe spaces like barbershops, church, the mosque, schools, YMCA, other community centers, things like that. And then letting people know that it's okay to not be okay and that help exists. And then identifying yourself as the help that exists is a great way to be out there. Investing in the next generation, I think, is really important. What you're doing is amazing. You're mentoring young people, you're teaching emotional literacy, you're creating a safe space for girls to speak, to feel, and be seen. I think that's really important. And so, us supporting those programs that teach these things and leadership from such a young age, it's monumental. And I think that this next generation of kids, they're going to be all right because they have so many resources available to them.
Yeah, you're making me emotional, Maya. Thank you.
Of course.
I feel like what we do, like you said, is going to be a cornerstone, set our girls and our boys even up for just a healthier way to engage in life, period. You just mentally, emotionally, spiritually, just better practices, better self-worth, and how they self-reflect, and their private conversations that they even have with themselves. They're going to be, and they are becoming, more healthy over time with resources. And the fact that you dedicated your life, your time, I know you make sacrifices, a master's, it's just the things that we are sacrificing. It doesn't feel like sacrifice. It's a
Yeah.
mission.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a mission. So
I
I
agree.
applaud you, and I love what you stand for, and to be in a space with you is so refreshing. And I learned so much today just talking to you. I've taken in a lot of things and taken a lot of notes, as my otter is taking notes for us. So thank you. But we do have one last thing. So here at Tilt Soil, we have a thing where we say, what would you tell your younger self? So we ask that you close your eyes and talk to your younger self very briefly. And what would you tell her from this place that you're in now? What would you reassure her?
You know what? My saying to myself would be really short. I would just tell my younger self that at the end of the day, everything is going to work out and everything that I went through is going to make sense because it's going to fill me with purpose and it's going to direct me to what I was put here to do. So everything will work out.
We love it. We love to hear it. Well, Maya, we want to thank you. So, if anybody would like to connect with Maya, you can reach her. This is her IG. Maya, I know that you and I are going to keep in touch on many
Of
different
course.
platforms. I'm just claiming that because I love your energy. And like I said, what you represent. You are definitely valuable to us, and we love you, and we will
I
support you in
appreciate
any way
that.
that you can. So you let us know. Don't hesitate. We're family. So we're going to make this happen.
Thank you so much, Shora. I really appreciate you setting up this conversation. It's definitely going to be the highlight of my day. And like I said before, I appreciate what you're doing for our young girls. It is necessary. And I'm really happy for what you're doing. And
Thank you.
I appreciate that you had me here today to talk a bit about
Abs-
myself and chime in on this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for affirming me. And I really appreciate that. And I hope that the deposit that we've made into each other today will last us all day and beyond that. So bless you. And we love you over here at Tilt Soil.
Thank you. I love you guys. I appreciate it.
Bye
Bye.
bye, Mike.